Some wars are fought over land, others are fought over freedom. But in one quiet suburban cul-de-sac, the war was over, the exact height of grass. It all started in the idyllic neighborhood of Willow Creek Estates, a pristine, HOA-governed community where lawns were as sacred as church pews, and the grass was expected to be between exactly 2.5 and 3 inches tall. No more, no less. The HOA board insisted this perfect range maintain property values and neighborhood harmony. For years, it seemed to work. Lawns were trimmed like golf courses, and every blade of grass stood at attention. But then came Derek Campbell, a new homeowner who didn't see the point of splitting hairs over half an inch of lawn height. He'd just moved in from the city, where he had no lawn to care about, and to him, grass was just grass. Derek preferred his grass at around 4 inches. It looked greener, fuller, and, according to his online research, healthier for the soil. But in Willow Creek Estates, 4 inches might as well have been a crime. The first warning came in the form of a polite letter from the HOA president, Pamela Ridgway. It was typed in an overly cheerful font, but the message was clear. Dear Mr. Campbell, please note that your lawn exceeds the community height regulations. Kindly bring it into compliance within 48 hours to avoid further action. Warm regards, Willow Creek HOA. Derek laughed it off. He'd just mowed it a week ago, and it was fine by his standards. 2 days later, a second letter arrived, this time, with a $50 fine attached. When Derek refused to pay, the HOA escalated. They sent an inspector, a wiry man named Keith, armed with a tape measure like a sheriff carrying a 6-shooter. Keith walked Derek's lawn, kneeling to measure random patches. His verdict? 3.8 inches. Out of compliance. Derek tried to explain that the difference between 3 inches and 3.8 inches wasn't worth starting a war over, but Pamela didn't care. The rules were the rules. Word spread fast in the neighborhood. Some residents sided with Derek, saying the HOA was being ridiculous. Others whispered that if the board let him get away with it, chaos would follow. Lawns would grow wild, weeds would take over, and property values would crumble. Soon, Derek wasn't just battling the HOA, he was battling half his neighbors. Pamela began holding special, emergency meetings to address what she called the grass situation. Derek wasn't invited, but he heard about them from Nancy, the friendly widow next door. She warned him that Pamela was pushing to add lawn inspection patrols, twice a week, specifically targeting his property. Derek decided to fight back. He started researching HOA laws, digging through bylaws, and even calling local news stations to ask if they'd be interested in the most absurd HOA story in America. That's when Pamela made her next move. One sunny Saturday morning, Derek woke up to the sound of a lawnmower. Looking out his window, he saw Keith, the HOA's enforcer, cutting his grass without permission. Derek stormed outside, furious. "This is trespassing," he shouted. Keith smirked. "No, sir, it's compliance enforcement. Section 8B of the HOA agreement allows us to maintain your property if you fail to do so." Derek, who had skimmed that section before, knew they were twisting it. He grabbed his phone and started recording. Keith didn't care, he kept mowing until the grass was acceptable by HOA standards. That night, Derek posted the video online with the caption, "HOA cuts my lawn without permission. Welcome to Willow Creek Estates." Within hours, it went viral. Comments poured in, calling the HOA tyrannical. But while Derek had the internet on his side, Pamela wasn't backing down. In fact, she doubled his fines for non-compliance before the cut and public defamation of the HOA afterward. The cul-de-sac was now divided into 2 camps, Team Derek and Team Pamela. Lawn signs started appearing, not political signs, but actual grass height slogans. One neighbor had a sign reading, "Short grass, strong community." Another countered with, "Let it grow." The tension was getting so bad that people avoided making eye contact during morning walks. Block parties were cancelled. Even the mailman complained about the awkward atmosphere. Then came the final straw of Section 1, one that would turn this simmering feud into a full-blown neighborhood war. Late one night, Derek heard a noise outside. He stepped onto his porch and froze. Someone had sprinkled grass seed all over his perfectly mowed lawn, fast-growing ryegrass, known to shoot up several inches in days. When Derek woke up the next morning, Pamela was already outside with Keith, holding a clipboard. "Out of compliance again," she said smugly. "You'll be hearing from us." This wasn't a dispute anymore. It was sabotage. And Derek was done playing nice. The ryegrass stunt was the breaking point. Derek stood on his porch, staring at the emerald green sprouts shooting up like defiant little soldiers, and made a silent vow: if the HOA wanted a fight, they were going to get one. First, he went on the offensive. He dug through every HOA meeting record, every budget report, every newsletter from the past 5 years. It didn't take long to find something juicy. Pamela's landscaping company, Ridgeway Lawn and Garden, had been getting exclusive contracts for the neighborhood's common areas, without ever putting the jobs out for bids. She'd been paying herself thousands from HOA funds. Derek knew better than to confront her directly. Instead, he dropped a manila envelope on the doorstep of Channel 7 News. The next week, the evening broadcast ran a segment titled, "HOA President Profits from Homeowners' Fees." Pamela was livid. She accused Derek of slander, threatened a lawsuit, and called an all-hands emergency HOA meeting. This time, Derek showed up, and he wasn't alone. Nearly a third of the neighborhood had come to support him, including Nancy and a few others tired of Pamela's iron-fisted rule. The meeting quickly devolved into chaos. Pamela slammed her gavel, shouting about respect for order and community standards. Derek raised his voice right back, waving a printed copy of the bylaws. The crowd split in two, some cheering him on, others booing. That's when Gary Miller, a quiet man from the far end of the street, stood up and revealed his own grievance. Pamela had fined him $200 for leaving a garden gnome on his lawn because it was not HOA-approved decor. The floodgates opened. One by one, residents began listing petty fines, unnecessary restrictions, and overreach. Pamela tried to regain control, but she was drowning in the noise. Derek knew he had momentum, and he decided to push it further. The next day, he launched a Facebook group, Willow Creek for Freedom. Within hours, it had half the neighborhood as members. People began sharing stories, posting photos of illegal flowers, non-compliant paint colors, and even Keith measuring kids' lemonade stands to ensure they weren't blocking sidewalks. Then the memes started. Someone photoshopped Pamela's face onto a police officer giving a lawn citation. Another showed Keith measuring grass with a ruler like a mad scientist. But the internet has a way of taking things too far. A local podcaster picked up the story and dubbed it the Great Lawn Wars. Soon, people from other states were weighing in, offering Derek tactical advice on resisting HOAs, from legal loopholes to creative gardening sabotage. Pamela saw the online attention as a personal attack. She ordered Keith to begin daily inspections of Derek's lawn, citing rapid growth due to illegal ryegrass seeding. Derek countered by installing security cameras and recording every encounter. And then, the mower incident happened. One sweltering afternoon, Derek came home to find his entire front lawn scalped, grass cut down to barely an inch, leaving brown patches of exposed soil. He checked his security footage and saw Keith, grinning, riding a zero-turn mower across the yard. This time, Derek didn't just post the video, he sent it to his lawyer. The footage showed clear trespassing, damage to personal property, and possible harassment. His lawyer sent Pamela a formal cease and desist letter, warning of a lawsuit if the harassment continued. Pamela didn't back down. In fact, she doubled the HOA's lawn fines against Derek, claiming his barren yard violated the community's appearance standards. By now, the neighborhood was fully divided. On one side, the short-grass loyalists, Pamela's diehard supporters, who kept their lawns trimmed like pudding greens and treated Derek like a criminal. On the other, the free growers, neighbors who had started letting their grass grow a little taller out of quiet rebellion. Things escalated beyond lawn care. Loyalists began filing complaints against free growers for garbage cans visible from the street and holiday decorations left up too long. In retaliation, the free growers started holding impromptu barbecues on their front lawns, blocking sidewalks, and, in one extreme case, planting tall ornamental grasses right at the edge of property lines. It was neighborhood warfare. One Saturday morning, Derek woke to the sound of chanting outside. He pulled back the curtain to see Pamela and 6 loyalists standing in his driveway, holding signs that read, "Cut it or quit it," and "Short grass equals pride." Nancy and a group of free growers marched down the street in response, carrying their own signs, "Let it grow," and "Free the grass." The two groups met in the middle of the cul-de-sac, shouting over each other. The mailman, caught in the middle, quietly backed away. By noon, someone had called the police. 2 officers arrived, trying to calm things down, but both sides wanted them to enforce the rules, except they couldn't, because it was a civil matter. Still, the sight of flashing lights in their perfect suburban street was the moment everyone realized, this had gotten way out of hand. Derek knew he had one more card to play. He'd been in touch with a state representative's office about potential HOA reform legislation. If he could turn the Willow Creek mess into a public example, it might pressure Pamela into backing down. But Pamela had plans of her own. She was quietly pushing for a special HOA vote to force Derek out of the community altogether, citing him as a persistent nuisance to neighborhood harmony. The stage was set for the final showdown. One man versus the HOA. One lawn versus an empire of rules. And the final battle was coming fast. The morning of the special HOA vote, the air in Willow Creek Estates was thick with tension. The clubhouse was packed, every homeowner showed up, some wearing green shirts for Team Derek, others in crisp white polos for Team Pamela. Pamela sat at the head table, gavel in hand, eyes locked on Derek like a general facing her greatest rival. Keith stood by her side, tape measure clipped to his belt like a badge of honor. The vote was simple: should Derek Campbell be fined until he either conformed to the grass height rule or sold his home and left the community? Pamela opened with a speech about order, property values, and the sanctity of rules. Derek followed with his own, laying out every instance of overreach, every fine, every act of harassment, and then dropped the final bombshell. He handed out copies of the HOA's own financial statements, highlighting the contracts Pamela had given herself through Ridgeway Lawn and Garden. Gasps filled the room. Even some of her most loyal supporters shifted uncomfortably. Pamela tried to call it fake news, but Derek's lawyer, seated in the front row, confirmed the documents were real. The tension broke into murmurs, and the tide began to turn. When it came time to vote, the result stunned everyone. Not only did Derek stay, but the board voted to remove Pamela as president. Keith, sensing his job was over, quietly slipped out the side door. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The new HOA president, Nancy, rewrote the lawn height rule to be a recommendation instead of a law, allowing a range from 2 to 5 inches. The lawn wars were officially over. But the scars remained. Some neighbors still avoided Derek, and a few lawns stayed permanently short as a silent act of defiance. Others embraced their newfound freedom, letting their grass sway in the breeze like a tiny personal victory. As for Derek, he didn't let the wind go to his head. He kept his lawn at about 4 inches, green and healthy, but never missed a mowing, not because of the HOA, but because it was his choice. Sometimes, on warm evenings, he'd sit on his porch and watch kids play in yards that no longer looked identical. It wasn't perfect harmony, but it was better than the tension that had once gripped the street. The Great Lawn Wars had started as a battle over blades of grass, but it ended up being about something much bigger: the right to decide how to live in your own home, even in a place ruled by rules. And while Derek hoped he'd never fight another war like it, he knew one thing for certain. In Willow Creek Estates, no one would ever look at a lawn the same way again.